My mother didn't even look up from carving the roast when she said it. The silver knife scraped against the porcelain platter, a sharp, rhythmic sound that cut through the heavy Sunday silence. Without missing a beat, she delivered the sentence that finally broke me. Your sister's family will always come first. You are always last. The words hung in the air above the mashed potatoes and green beans. I looked at my father across the table. I waited for him to correct her. I waited for him to say that wasn't true, that they loved their daughters equally. Instead, he reached for the salt. He nodded his head slowly, like she had just commented on the rainy weather, not a wound. I didn't argue. I didn't scream or flip the table. I just felt a cold, quiet clarity settle in my chest. I set my napkin down next to my plate and looked at them both. Good to know, I said. That was the moment I stopped waiting for my place at their table and started building one of my own. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below telling me, where in the world are you watching from? I grew up in a house defined by quiet rankings. It wasn't something written on a chore chart or discussed in family meetings. It was something you felt, like a change in air pressure before a storm. You could hear it in the footsteps. When my sister Lydia walked into the kitchen, the room seemed to bright. My mother would turn away from the sink, wiping her hands on her apron, her face already lifting into a smile. My father would put down his newspaper. The volume of the house went up. Lydia, honey, how was school? Did you get the part in the play? Tell us everything. When I walked in, the volume faded. The newspaper went back up. My mother's back remained turned. The silence wasn't hostile, exactly. It was just indifferent. It was the silence of a room that didn't know you were there or didn't care. I was the second child. In some families, that means you are the baby, the spoiled one. In the Maddox house, it meant I was the spare. Lydia was the masterpiece. I was the rough draft that they decided to keep but didn't want to frame. I remember being 10 years old. It was a Tuesday. I had just won the spelling bee at school. I had practiced for weeks, memorizing words until my tongue felt heavy with them. I walked home with the blue ribbon pinned to my chest, the metal clasp cold against my skin. I felt important. I felt visible. I burst through the front door. Mom, Dad, look. My mother was in the living room, sitting on the edge of the sofa. She was holding Lydia's hand. Lydia was crying softly, her shoulders shaking. "SHH, Corinne," my father hissed, stepping between me and them. "Not now." "But I won," I whispered, touching the ribbon. "Lydia had a hard day," my dad said, his voice low and serious. "Some girls at school were mean to her. She needs our focus right now. Go to your room." I stood there for a second, the victory draining out of me. I looked at Lydia. She wasn't bleeding. She wasn't sick, she was just sad. But in our house, Lydia's sadness was a natural disaster that required emergency response. My joy was just noise. I went to my room. I took the ribbon off and put it in my drawer, underneath my socks. I never showed it to them again. They never asked. That was the dynamic. Lydia's emotions were the weather we all lived in. If Lydia was happy, it was a sunny day. If Lydia was upset, we were all in a hurricane. I learned to make myself small, to be the calm, low-maintenance one. I thought if I caused zero problems, they would appreciate me. I thought if I required nothing, they would love me for it. I was wrong. Being low maintenance just made me invisible. The most painful example, the one that still sits in my gut like a stone, happened when we turned 16. Lydia is 2 years older than me. When she turned 16, the build-up started months in advance. My parents whispered in the kitchen. They took secretive phone calls. The energy in the house was electric. On the morning of her birthday, they woke her up with a tray of pancakes. That evening, there was a party, a big one. Cousins we hadn't seen in years drove down. There was a caterer. And then the moment came. "Lydia," my father said, beaming, his face flushed with pride. "Close your eyes." He led her out the front door. We all followed, the aunts, the uncles, the neighbors. I stood at the back of the crowd. There, sitting in the driveway under the porch light, was a car. It wasn't a Porsche, but it was a brand new white sedan. It had a giant red bow on the hood, the kind you see in commercials and think aren't real. Lydia screamed. She covered her mouth. She cried. My mother hugged her, tears streaming down her own face. "You deserve it, baby," my mother said. "We are so proud of the woman you are becoming." Lydia hadn't worked a day in her life. She had average grades. She was sweet, sure, but she wasn't extraordinary. But to them, she was the sun. I remember watching them hug in the glow of the headlights. I remember feeling a specific kind of hunger in my chest. It wasn't jealousy of the car. I didn't care about the metal and the wheels. I wanted someone to look at me the way my father was looking at her, like I was a prize, like I was worth a celebration. I waited. 2 years later, I turned 16. I woke up early, my heart beating fast. I knew we didn't have the money for another new car. My father had mentioned business was slow, but I thought there would be something, a gesture, a moment. I walked into the kitchen. The counter was empty. No pancakes. My mother was rushing around, looking for her keys. "Morning, Corinne," she said, not looking at me. "I'm running late. There's cereal on top of the fridge. Oh, and can you pick up the dry cleaning after school?" "It's my birthday," I said. My voice was small. She stopped. She blinked, looking at me like I had spoken in a foreign language, then realization washed over her face. "Oh, goodness, is that today?" She checked her watch. "Happy birthday, honey. We'll do something this weekend, okay? I really have to run." She kissed my forehead, a quick dry peck, and left. I stood in the silent kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. I poured myself a bowl of cereal. I ate it standing up. That weekend, they didn't throw a party. There were no cousins, no caterer. On Sunday night, my dad came home with a white cardboard box from the grocery store. He put it on the table. "Here we go," he said. Inside was a sheet cake. It had blue frosting roses. It said "Happy Birthday, Corinne." They had spelled my name wrong. It was missing an N. They gave me a card. I opened it. Inside, my mother's handwriting was loopy and rushed. "We're proud of you. Love, Mom and Dad." There was no cash, no gift card, just the cake and the card. "We figured you didn't need a big fuss," my mom said, cutting a slice. "You've always been so mature. Lydia needed the confidence boost when she was 16, you know. But you're strong. You don't need all that showy stuff." I looked at the cake with my misspelled name. I looked at their smiling, oblivious faces. They were rewriting history to make themselves feel better. They were calling their neglect a compliment. They were telling me that I got less because I was better. "Thanks," I said. I ate the cake. It tasted like wax and sugar. It tasted like the truth. That was love in our house. Conditional, selective, performative. Lydia got the love that shouted. I got the love that was whispered as an afterthought. If my childhood was about emotional silence, my young adulthood was about financial noise. Money in the Maddox family wasn't just currency. It was a scoreboard. It was the physical proof of who mattered. The pattern solidified when I was a senior in high school. College applications were due. I had the grades. I had the ambition. I wanted to study engineering. I had found a program at a state university 3 hours away. It was perfect. I brought the acceptance letter to the dinner table. "I got in," I said. I placed the thick envelope next to the salt shaker. "That's nice, Corinne," my father said. He didn't open it. "Have you looked at the tuition?" "I have," I said. "It's reasonable, and if I get a part-time job, I can cover books and food. But I'll need help with the tuition and the dorm." My parents exchanged a look. It was the look, the one that meant no. "Corinne," my mother started, using her soft, reasonable voice. "We've been looking at the numbers. With Lydia still in college, it's expensive. Her sorority dues, her apartment, her car insurance. It adds up. Lydia was at a private university. She was majoring in art history. She was living in an off-campus apartment that cost more than our mortgage. So, I asked, I'm going to a state school, it's half the price. We just can't stretch it right now, my father said, cutting his steak. You're smart, Corinne. You're a worker, we know you can figure this out. Maybe student loans, or you could work for a year and save up. You pay for Lydia's everything, I said. My voice wasn't steady anymore. You pay her rent. You pay for her spring break trips. Lydia is different, Mom said quickly. She gets overwhelmed easily. She can't work and study at the same time, her anxiety. We have to support her. But you're tough. You've always been the independent one. There it was again. My strength was being used as the excuse for their neglect. Because I could survive without them, they decided I had to. So I'm on my own, I asked. We're cheering for you, Dad said. That's not nothing. I stood up. Cheering doesn't pay tuition. I took the acceptance letter and walked away. I went to that college, but I didn't go as their daughter. I went as a stranger. I took out the maximum amount of loans. I got a job working the night shift at a 24-hour diner near campus. I worked from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., 3 nights a week. My college experience wasn't parties and football games. It was coffee, exhaustion, and the smell of grease in my hair. I remember one night in my sophomore year. It was 2 a.m. I was scrubbing the grill at the diner, my arms aching. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. I pulled it out. It was a notification from Facebook. My mother had tagged me in a photo album. Family vacation in Cabo. I scrolled through the pictures. There was my dad, holding a margarita. There was my mom, tanned and laughing. And there was Lydia, standing between them, wearing a white sundress, looking like a princess. They were in Mexico. They hadn't even told me they were going. I looked at the timestamp. Uploaded 10 minutes ago. I stood there in the harsh fluorescent light of the diner kitchen, surrounded by dirty dishes. I calculated the cost of that trip. The flights alone would have paid for my textbooks for 2 years. The hotel would have paid off a chunk of my loan. I didn't comment on the photo. I turned my phone off and went back to scrubbing the grill. I scrubbed until my knuckles were white. I scrubbed until I imagined I was scrubbing them out of my system, but the final blow, the one that really cemented the wall between us, came on my graduation day. It was 5 years later. It took me an extra year because I had to work so much, but I did it. I was graduating with honors in civil engineering. I sent them the date 6 months in advance. May 15th, 10 a.m., please be there. My mother texted back. We wouldn't miss it for the world. I bought a new dress. I paid for my own cap and gown. On the morning of graduation, I stood in the line of students feeling a swell of pride. I had done this. Me, no handouts, no safety net. I walked into the stadium. I scanned the crowd. I had reserved 4 seats. I saw the seats. They were empty. I checked my phone. Nothing. The ceremony started. Names were called. Adams, Baker, Collins. I kept looking at the empty seats. Maybe traffic was bad. Maybe they were parking. Maddox, Corinne, they called my name. I walked across the stage. I shook the dean's hand. I looked up at the stands one last time. Empty. I didn't smile for the professional photo. I just looked tired. When I got back to my phone, there was a text message from my dad. It had come in 20 minutes ago. Lydia is having a crisis. She thinks Evan might be cheating on her. She's hysterical. We had to drive over to her place to calm her down. We won't make it. Send us a picture. So proud. Lydia lived 2 towns over from them. They had driven past the university to get to her. They chose her panic attack over my graduation. They chose her drama over my triumph. It wasn't neglect anymore. It was a tradition. It was a deliberate choice made over and over again. I sat on a concrete bench outside the stadium. Families were swarming around me. Fathers were hugging daughters, holding bouquets of flowers. Mothers were crying tears of joy. I was alone. I held my diploma in my lap. It was just a piece of paper, but it was mine. I realized then that I had been playing a game I could never win. I had been trying to earn my way into their hearts. I thought if I worked hard enough, if I was successful enough, they would finally see me. But they didn't want to see me. They only had eyes for Lydia. I stopped crying. I stood up. I walked to my beat-up car, the one I bought with my own money, and I threw the cap and gown in the backseat. I didn't reply to my father's text. I drove to a bar, ordered a glass of champagne, and toasted the empty seat next to me. To Corinne, I said to the air, "You're on your own, kid. And you're doing just fine." The Maddox family always had a favorite, and I learned early that it wasn't me. But that day, I decided that if I couldn't be their favorite, I would be my own. After graduation, I didn't make a scene. I didn't cut them off with a dramatic letter. I just drifted. I moved to Raleigh, 2 hours away. It was close enough to visit for holidays, but far enough that they couldn't drop by unannounced. For the next 4 years, I worked. And I worked hard. I got a job as a junior engineer at a large firm. I was the first one in the office and the last one to leave. I liked engineering because it made sense. Structures had rules. If you built a foundation correctly, the house stood up. If you cut corners, it fell down. It was honest. It was the opposite of my family. I lived below my means. I drove my old car until the engine finally gave out, and then I bought a sensible used Honda. I cooked my own meals. I put 50% of every paycheck into savings and investments. While Lydia was posting photos of her new designer handbags and her tropical vacations on Instagram, I was watching my bank account grow. I bought a condo. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. It had 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, and a balcony that looked out over the city. The first night I slept there, I lay in the middle of the bed and listened. I heard the traffic outside. I heard the refrigerator hum, but mostly I heard silence. There was no drama. No one was crying in the next room. No one was demanding my attention. No one was comparing me to anyone else. Independence wasn't just about paying bills. It was oxygen. For the first time in my life, I could breathe. I built a life. I made friends who didn't know my last name meant second best. I started dating a woman named Ava. She was kind, grounded, and really saw me. I kept my visits to my parents' house brief. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter. I would drive down, smile, eat the food, hand over generic gifts, and leave before the inevitable argument started. I was polite. I was distant. I was a guest in my own childhood home. They didn't seem to mind. As long as I didn't cause trouble, they were happy to ignore me. They were too busy with Lydia anyway. Lydia had married Evan, a man who had big dreams and very little work ethic. They had 2 kids in quick succession. My parents were obsessed with the grandchildren. They were always over at Lydia's house, babysitting, fixing things, paying for things. I was the aunt who sent Amazon gift cards. I was the daughter who was doing fine. Corinne is so low maintenance, my mom would tell her friends. We never have to worry about her. She said it like it was a virtue, but I knew it was just a convenience. Then one Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed on my desk at work. It was a group text. Mom, Dad, Lydia, Evan, and me. Family meeting this Sunday, 1 p.m., Mom and Dad's house. Important. There were no emojis. No hope you can make it. No question mark. I stared at the screen. My stomach tightened. The old reflex kicked in, the fear that I was in trouble, that I had done something wrong. Then the rational part of my brain took over. I was 27 years old. I was a homeowner. I had a portfolio. I wasn't a child. I typed back, "Is everyone okay?" The response came from my dad, "Just be there." I didn't want to go. Every instinct in my body told me to say I was busy. I had a life now. I had plans with Ava. I had a Sunday ritual of coffee and reading that I didn't want to break. But the Maddox guilt is a strong wire. It pulls you back even when you think you've cut it. "You should go," Ava said that night, watching me pace around the kitchen. "If you don't, you'll wonder. Just go, see what they want and leave. You have the keys to your own car. You can leave whenever you want." She was right. I wasn't trapped anymore. "Okay," I said, "I'll go." But as I drove down the highway that Sunday, watching the familiar landmarks pass by, the exit for the mall, the old high school, I felt the armor I had built start to crack. I wasn't engineer Corinne, the successful woman with the quiet apartment. I was Corinne, the daughter, the one who was always last. I pulled into the driveway. Lydia's massive SUV was already there. My dad's truck was parked next to it. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection in the mirror, and told myself one thing: do not let them make you feel small. I got out of the car and walked to the front door. I didn't knock, I just walked in. I didn't know it then, but I was walking into a trap. The peace I had built for 4 years was about to be tested. The house smelled like lemon polish and old tension. I walked into the living room. It was staged like a courtroom. My parents were sitting in their matching recliners. Lydia and Evan were sitting on the loveseat, huddled together like survivors of a shipwreck. Lydia looked terrible. Her eyes were red and puffy. She was wearing sweatpants, which she never did in front of Mom. Evan looked pale, staring at the carpet, his hands clasped between his knees. But the most terrifying thing in the room wasn't the people. It was the coffee table. It was covered in paper, stacks of envelopes with red stamps, bank statements, notices. Some of them had been highlighted in yellow marker. "Hi," I said, standing in the doorway. I didn't sit down. There wasn't a seat left anyway, unless I wanted to drag a dining chair in from the other room. "Corinne," my dad said. He didn't smile. "Grab a chair." I walked to the dining room, dragged a heavy wooden chair across the floor, and placed it opposite them. I sat down. "What's going on?" I asked. Lydia let out a small sob. Evan put his arm around her. "We have a situation," my mother said. She used the tone she used when discussing a neighborhood scandal. Serious, hushed, but with a hint of drama. "Lydia and Evan are in a bit of financial trouble," Dad said. I looked at the table. "A bit." Evan cleared his throat. "The business. It didn't take off like we thought, and the house market shifted. And the credit cards, the interest rates just skyrocketed." I looked at the papers again. I could see the headers from where I sat. Final notice. Past due collections. "How bad?" I asked. "Bad," my dad said. "They are at risk of losing the house. The cars could be repossessed next week." I felt a flash of sympathy. No one wants to see their sister homeless. "I'm sorry," I said. "That sounds incredibly stressful. Is that why we're here? To brainstorm a budget?" The room went silent. My mother smoothed her skirt. "Not exactly," Mom said. Dad leaned forward. He clasped his hands. He looked like a CEO about to deliver a merger proposal. "We've been going over the numbers all morning," he said. "The hole is deep, about $80,000 deep." I blinked. 80,000. "It's not just the debt," Lydia whispered. "It's the monthly payments. We can't breathe." "We are going to help," Dad said. "Your mother and I were going to take 20,000 from our retirement savings to catch up the mortgage and keep the lights on." "Okay," I said slowly. "That's generous of you. But we can't do it all," Mom cut in. She looked at me. Her eyes were hard, focused. "We're retired, Corinne. We have a fixed income. We can't drain everything." "I understand," I said. "So they need to sell the house." "Downsize?" Lydia gasped. "We can't move. The kids love that school. All our friends are there. It would destroy them. And the market is bad," Evan added quickly. "If we sell now, we lose money." "So what is the plan?" I asked. My father looked me dead in the eye. "You," he said. I felt the air leave the room. "Me. You're the only one in a position to fix this," Mom said. She spoke quickly, like she had rehearsed the speech. "We know you've been doing well. You have that good job. You live in that condo so your expenses are low. You don't have children to worry about. You don't have a husband." I stiffened. "I have a partner, Ava. We have a life. But you're not married," Mom waved her hand dismissively. "And you don't have dependents. Your money is just sitting there." "Sitting there," I repeated. "It's my savings. It's my retirement. It's my security." Family is security, Dad said, his voice dropping an octave. Lydia is your sister. These are your niece and nephew. Would you really watch them get thrown out on the street while you sit on a pile of cash? The manipulation was so clumsy, yet so heavy. They were weaponizing my stability against me. We aren't asking for a gift, Evan said, though he couldn't meet my eyes. Think of it as a family investment. We need $60,000, Dad said. To clear the high-interest debt and the cars. That resets the clock for them. $60,000. That was almost everything I had in my liquid savings. That was 3 years of scrimping, saving, and denying myself vacations. You want me to write a check, I said, my voice flat. For $60,000, to pay off credit cards and luxury cars. To save your sister, Mom corrected. Why didn't you ask me before it got this bad? I looked at Lydia. You just bought a new boat last summer. I saw the pictures. We thought the bonus was coming, Lydia cried. We thought things would turn around. Stop judging me, Corinne. You've always been so judgmental. I'm not judging, I said. I'm looking at the math. You spent money you didn't have. That's enough, Dad snapped. He slammed his hand on the armrest. We are not here to shame Lydia. She feels bad enough. We are here to find a solution. And the solution is me, I asked. It makes sense, Mom said. Her voice turned reasonable again, that sickly sweet tone that hid the poison. Corinne, honey, look at the facts. You're single, you're stable, you have more than you need. Lydia is drowning. In a family, the strong help the weak. That's just how it works. It wasn't a request, it was an expectation. They had looked at my life, my hard work, my discipline, my sacrifice, and they didn't see success. They saw a resource. They saw a piggy bank to be smashed open so Lydia could keep living a life she couldn't afford. They were punishing me for being responsible. They were rewarding her for being reckless. We expect you to handle the rest, Mom said, leaning back. We'll wire our part tomorrow. You can get a cashier's check on Monday. She spoke as if it were already decided, as if my consent was just a formality. I looked at them. I looked at my parents, who had never bought me a car, never paid my rent, never showed up for my graduation. I looked at my sister, who had taken everything they gave her and still demanded more. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't fear anymore. It wasn't sadness. It was rage. But it was a cold, quiet rage. I need 24 hours, I said. What? Dad frowned. What is there to think about? $60,000 is a lot of money, I said calmly. I need to check my accounts. I need to look at the tax implications. I need 24 hours. We need to know today, Mom said. The bank is calling Evan tomorrow. I stood up. I pushed the heavy wooden chair back. Then the answer is no, I said. Silence, shocked silence. If you need an answer right this second, it's no, I repeated. If you give me 24 hours to think, the answer might be something else. I stared at my father. He looked like I had slapped him. He wasn't used to me negotiating. He was used to me fading into the background. Fine, he grunted. Tomorrow, but don't you dare leave your sister hanging. I'll call you tomorrow evening, I said. I turned around and walked out. Corinne, Lydia called after me. Please, I didn't turn back. I walked out the front door into the fresh air. My hands were shaking as I unlocked my car. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, gripping the wheel. You are always last, my mother's voice echoed in my head. She was right, I was always last on their list of priorities. But I was the first person they called when they needed money. I started the engine. They wanted me to save them, fine. But if I was going to do this, it wasn't going to be on their terms. It was going to be on mine. I didn't turn on the radio for the entire drive home. 2 hours of silence. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned the color of bone. The highway stretched out in front of me, a gray ribbon of asphalt, but I wasn't really seeing it. I was seeing my mother's face. It just makes sense that you handle the rest. The words replayed in my mind like a broken record. They circled and echoed, getting louder every time. You're single, you're stable, you don't have kids. She had listed my life choices like they were defects, like my freedom was a mistake that needed to be corrected by paying for my sister's failures. I merged into the right lane, passing a semi-truck. The vibration of the road traveled up my arms. It wasn't just the money. I had the money. If I wrote that check, I wouldn't starve. I wouldn't lose my condo. I would just be set back 3 years. It was the principle. It was the fact that for my entire life, I had been told to stand in the back. I had been told to wait. I had been told that my needs were secondary to Lydia's feelings. Your sister's family will always come first. You are always last. My mother had said that over a roast dinner years ago. She had meant it as a statement of fact, like gravity. But today, in that living room, she had turned it into a policy. I was last when it came to love. I was last when it came to support. But suddenly, when the bill came due, I was first in line. I felt a hot tear slide down my cheek. I angrily wiped it away. Don't you dare cry, I told myself. Crying is what Lydia does. Crying gets you nothing in that house. I focused on the road. I started to think like an engineer. What was the structural problem here? The problem was a lack of consequences. Lydia made a mess. Mom and Dad cleaned it up. Mom and Dad ran out of cleaning supplies. They called me. If I wrote the check, I was just becoming part of the machine. I would be another enabler. In 2 years, Lydia would be back in debt, and they would be back at my door, asking for more. I couldn't just say yes. But I couldn't just say no, either. If I said no, they would paint me as the villain forever. I would be the cold-hearted sister who let her niece and nephew lose their home. They would weaponize my refusal to make me the bad guy, and I would be cut off completely. I needed a third option. I pulled into the parking garage of my building. The concrete walls felt cool and safe. I parked my Honda in my assigned spot. I took the elevator up to the 4th floor. I unlocked my door. The apartment was quiet. The evening sun was streaming through the tall windows, casting long, golden shadows across the hardwood floor. It smelled like vanilla and old books, Ava's scent. Ava was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables. She looked up when I walked in. She saw my face. She put the knife down immediately. "That bad?" she asked. I dropped my keys on the counter. The sound was sharp. "Worse," I said. I walked over to the fridge and poured myself a glass of cold water. I drank it in one long gulp. My throat felt like it was full of dust. "They want $60,000, I said. Ava's eyes went wide. "What?" "Lydia and Evan are $80,000 in the hole. Mom and Dad are putting in 20. They expect me to cover the rest." "Expect," Ava repeated. "Not ask. Expect, because I'm single, because I don't have real responsibilities like children." Ava walked around the island and hugged me. She was warm and solid. I leaned into her, letting the tension in my shoulders drop for the first time in 6 hours. "That is not okay, Corinne," she whispered into my hair. "That is abusive." I told them I needed 24 hours, I said, pulling back. "Good. You should take 24 years. I can't just let the kids lose their house, Ava. My niece and nephew didn't buy a boat they couldn't afford. They're innocent." "So you're going to pay it?" Ava asked, a worry line appearing between her eyebrows. "Corinne, that's your savings. That's our future house down payment." "I didn't say I was going to pay it," I said. I looked at my laptop sitting on the coffee table. A plan was forming in my head. It was cold. It was logical. It was perfect. "I'm going to make them an offer," I said, "but they aren't going to like it." That night I didn't sleep. I worked. I sat at the dining table with my laptop open. Ava brought me takeout Thai food, but I barely touched it. I was in the zone. I opened my banking app. I looked at the numbers. Checking, savings, investment portfolio. I stared at the total. It was a quiet empire, just like I had told myself. I had built this brick by brick. Every dollar there represented a shift I worked, a vacation I skipped, a dress I didn't buy. It represented my freedom. My parents saw this number as a surplus. They thought because I had it, I didn't need it. They didn't understand that for me, money wasn't about buying things. It was about safety. It was the wall that kept me from ever having to crawl back to them. I created a new folder on my desktop. I named it, The Maddox Proposal. I opened a blank document. I wasn't going to write a check. I was going to write a contract. I started typing. Loan agreement lender, Corinne Maddox borrowers, Lydia Maddox Hart and Evan Hart guarantors, Charles and Margaret Maddox. I typed furiously. The cursor blinked, marching across the white screen like a soldier. If I was going to act like a bank, I was going to treat this like a business transaction. Banks don't give money based on guilt. They give money based on terms. Clause 1, the principal. The sum of $60,000 will be provided to clear immediate high-interest debts. Clause 2, repayment. This is not a gift. It is a loan. Repayment will begin in 90 days. The term is 5 years. Clause 3, interest. Interest will be applied at 3%. I paused. 3% was low. A bank would charge them 7% or 8%, but I wanted to be fair. I wasn't trying to profit off them. I was trying to teach them that money has a cost. If I gave it to them for free 0% interest, they wouldn't respect it. Clause 4, transparency. Full access to Lydia and Evan's financial statements must be granted to the lender, Corinne, quarterly to ensure no new debt is being accrued. Then came the hard part, the part that wasn't about money. I stopped typing. I looked out the window at the city lights. I thought about the graduation ceremony with the empty seats. I thought about the misspelled birthday cake. I needed to fix the dynamic, not just the debt. I started typing again. Clause 5, counseling. Borrowers Lydia and Evan must attend bi-weekly financial counseling with a certified planner for the first year. Clause 6, family therapy. All parties, lender, borrowers, and guarantors must attend monthly family therapy sessions with a licensed therapist selected by the lender. I stared at Clause 6. This was the deal-breaker. This was the one they would hate. My parents didn't believe in therapy. They believed in sweeping things under the rug. They believed in keeping private matters private. But I wasn't going to hand over $60,000 just to sit in silence at the next Christmas dinner. If they wanted my help, they had to hear my voice. I added one final section. It was petty, maybe, but I needed it. Clause 7. Acknowledgement. The family acknowledges that this financial support is the result of Corinne Maddox's sole efforts and that previous family resources were disproportionately allocated to Lydia Maddox Hart. I read it back. It was heavy legal speak for, admit you gave her everything and me nothing, and admit that I am the one saving you now. I printed it out. The printer whirred, spitting out the pages. The paper was warm in my hands. Ava walked in from the bedroom, rubbing her eyes. She was wearing her oversized t-shirt. "You're still up?" she asked. "I'm done," I said. I handed her the stack of papers. Ava sat down and read it. She read slowly. Her eyebrows went up when she saw the interest rate. Her jaw dropped when she saw the therapy clause. She finished and set the papers down on the table. She looked at me with a mixture of awe and fear. "Corinne," she said softly, "this is intense." "Is it unfair?" I asked. "No," she said. "It's incredibly fair. It's generous, actually. You're giving them a lifeline, but what? They are going to lose their minds. This forces them to look at themselves. Your parents hate looking at themselves." "I know," I said. "That's the point." I took the papers back and put them in a crisp manila folder. I felt calm. The panic from the drive home was gone. The hurt was still there, but it was packaged now. It was managed. "You're not choosing against them," Ava said, standing up and placing a hand on my shoulder. "You're choosing for yourself." "Yes," I said. "For the first time in my life, my silence isn't surrender. It's preparation." I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. "I'm going to sleep," I said. "I have a meeting tomorrow." I went to bed, but I didn't dream. I just lay in the dark, visualizing the living room, the recliners, the coffee table. I wasn't walking in there as the forgotten daughter tomorrow. I was walking in as the CEO of my own life. Sunday arrived with a gray, heavy sky. It looked like it was going to rain, but it never did. It just hung there, pressing down on the roof of my parents' house. I walked in at exactly 1 p.m. I was wearing a blazer. It was a small choice, but it mattered. I wasn't wearing my comfortable weekend sweater. I was wearing my work armor. The living room was exactly as I had left it on Wednesday. My parents were in the recliners. Lydia and Evan were on the loveseat. The stack of bills was still on the coffee table, a monument to their mistakes. "You're back," my dad said. He sounded relieved. "We were worried." "I said I would be," I replied. I didn't sit in the dining chair this time. I stood at the end of the coffee table. I held the manila folder in my hands. "So?" Mom asked. She was leaning forward, her hands gripping the armrests. "Did you move the funds? Can we tell Lydia it's handled?" "I have a proposal," I said. I placed the folder on top of their pile of overdue notices. It covered the red ink with clean, crisp manila. "A proposal?" Evan asked. He reached for it. "Read it," I said. "All of you." Evan opened the folder. He pulled out the stapled contract. He started reading the first page. Lydia looked over his shoulder. "A loan agreement," Evan said, his voice confused. "Corinne, what is this?" "It's exactly what it says," I answered. "I am willing to lend you the $60,000. But these are the terms." "Lend," Mom stood up. Her face was flushing pink. "Corinne, we are family. We don't lend to each other, we help each other." "You asked for $80,000 of help," I said calmly. "You and Dad are giving 20, I am covering the rest, but I am not giving it away. I worked too hard for it." "Interest," Evan read aloud. 3% interest. "That's lower than inflation," I pointed out. "And it's a hell of a lot lower than the 25% you're paying on those credit cards right now." Dad snatched the papers from Evan. He scanned them quickly. His eyes narrowed. "Financial counseling," he scoffed. "Mandatory therapy." "Corinne, this is insulting. You're treating your sister like a delinquent." "I'm treating her like someone who is $80,000 in debt," I said. "If she goes to a bank, they will decline her. I am approving her. But I need to know this won't happen again in 2 years. I need security." "This isn't how we do things," Mom snapped. "We don't sign contracts. We don't drag strangers into our business with therapy." "Maybe that's the problem," I said. My voice didn't shake. "The way we do things has resulted in Lydia being broke and you draining your retirement. The old way isn't working." Lydia looked up from the paper. She had reached the last page. Her face was pale. "Clause 7, she whispered. "What is it?" Dad asked. "Public acknowledgement," Lydia read. "The family acknowledges that previous family resources were disproportionately allocated to Lydia." The room went deadly silent. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Mom looked at me with pure shock. "You want us to sign a paper saying we loved her more?" I want you to sign a paper admitting you gave her more, I corrected. Because you did. You paid for her college. You paid for her wedding. You paid for her house down payment. You paid for her cars. I took a breath. I paid for my own tuition. I paid for my own rent. I paid for my own car. I saved this money while you were buying her things. If I am going to bail her out now, I want the truth on paper. I want you to admit that I am the one saving this family, not the one you invested in. You are being petty, Dad spat. You are kicking your sister when she is down. No, I said, I am standing up, finally. We won't sign it, Mom said, crossing her arms. It's ridiculous, it's cold, it's unloving. That's fine, I said. I reached for the folder. Then the answer is no. Good luck with the bank tomorrow. I started to pull the folder away. Wait, Lydia screamed. She lunged forward and grabbed the other end of the folder. Lydia, Mom said warningly. Don't let her bully you. Mom, they're going to take the house. Lydia was crying now, ugly, desperate tears. I don't care about the contract. I don't care about the therapy. I need the money. Lydia looked at me. Her eyes were wild. I'll sign it, she sobbed. I'll sign anything, just please, Corinne, please help us. Evan looked at his wife, then at me. He looked defeated. I'll sign it too. I looked at my parents. They stood there, stiff and angry. They were the gatekeepers of the family myth, the myth that we were all treated equally. I was asking them to dismantle it. We need all parties to sign, I said, or no deal. Dad looked at Lydia's tear-streaked face. He looked at the bills. He looked at me. He saw something in my eyes he had never seen before. He saw that I wasn't bluffing. He saw that the daughter who used to wait for crumbs was now holding the loaf of bread. Fine, he grumbled. He sat back down heavily. Give me the damn pen. Mom, I asked. She glared at me. You are breaking this family apart. No, I said. I'm building a foundation. Structures need foundations, Mom. You can't just build on feelings. She didn't understand. But she sat down. I handed Evan the pen. You told me I was always last, I said to my mother as they passed the paper around. This is what first looks like. They didn't sign that night because they wanted to. They signed because they had to. But 3 days later, the money was wired. The debts were cleared. The house was safe. The first month was awkward. The payments from Lydia and Evan came in via autodraft. $1,000 a month. It was a drop in the bucket of the total loan, but seeing that notification on my phone, payment received, felt like victory. It was proof that they were finally taking responsibility. Then came the therapy. I found a therapist named Dr. Lawson. She was a no-nonsense woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She didn't care about our family politeness. The first session was a disaster. We sat in a circle in her office. Mom spent the first 20 minutes talking about the weather and how nice the office daycare was. Dad sat with his arms crossed, staring at the floor. Let's talk about why we are here, Dr. Lawson said eventually. We're here because Corinne made us come, Mom said, shooting me a look. It was a condition of the loan. And why was the loan necessary? Dr. Lawson asked. Because Lydia had some bad luck, Dad said. It wasn't bad luck, I said. I spoke quietly. It was a pattern. That started the argument. Voices were raised. Accusations flew. But for the first time, we were actually arguing about the real issues, not just dancing around them. Session 3 was the breakthrough. I brought up the graduation. I told them about the empty seats. I told them about standing there, watching other families, holding my diploma alone. We were dealing with Lydia's crisis, Mom defended. Lydia's crisis was a fight with a boyfriend, I said. My graduation was a once-in-a-lifetime event. You chose a Tuesday afternoon drama over my 4 years of hard work. I turned to Lydia. And you let them, I said. You called them. You knew it was my graduation. You needed the attention more than you wanted me to be happy. Lydia opened her mouth to argue, but then she stopped. She looked at Evan. Evan looked away. Lydia started. Her voice cracked. I did know I was jealous. The room went quiet. What? Mom whispered. I was jealous, Lydia said, tears spilling over. Corinne was always the smart one, the one who could handle things. I felt useless. So I created problems. Because when I had problems, you guys rushed in. It made me feel important. It was the most honest thing Lydia had ever said. My mother looked struck. She looked from Lydia to me. She saw the dynamic clearly for the first time. She saw that her help had crippled Lydia and her neglect had hardened me. We didn't see you, Mom said. Her voice was trembling. She looked at me. Corinne, we just thought you were okay. We thought you didn't need us. Every child needs their parents, I said. I just stopped asking because it hurt too much to be ignored. Mom started to cry. Not the polite, dainty crying she usually did. Real, deep sobs. I'm sorry, she said. I am so sorry. Dad didn't say anything. He just reached out and took my hand. He squeezed it hard. His eyes were wet. It wasn't a magic fix. They didn't suddenly become perfect parents. but the lie was gone. The silence was broken, they knew. And they knew that I knew. 6 months later, I was packing a box. But this time, I wasn't moving because I had to. I was moving because I wanted to. Ava and I had bought a new place. A townhouse in the city with a garden and a guest room. I taped the box shut. I looked around my old condo. It had been my bunker, my safe house. But I didn't need a bunker anymore. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Lydia. Payment sent. Also, can we do lunch next week? Just us? No parents. I smiled. Lydia and I were never going to be best friends. We were too different. But we were building something new. Respect. She was sticking to the budget. She was working a part-time job now to help pay back the loan. She was growing up finally. I picked up the last box. Ava walked in, holding a small potted plant. For the new windowsill, she said. Every new chapter needs something living. I love it, I said. We walked out to the car. The sun was shining. The air felt crisp and clean. I thought about my mother's sentence. You are always last. She had been wrong. I wasn't last. I was just playing a different game. While they were sprinting for attention, I was training for a marathon. While they were building houses of cards, I was pouring concrete. I had saved them. But more importantly, I had saved myself from needing them. The old house, the one with the recliners and the silence, still stood. My parents still lived there. But it didn't live rent-free in my head anymore. The ghosts were gone. Families don't always change because they want to. Sometimes, they change because you stop carrying the weight for them. You stop playing your role. You stop accepting the script they wrote for you. They were right about one thing. I was always the one at the back of the line. And that's exactly why, when it finally mattered, I was the only one strong enough to lead. I got into the car next to Ava. I took her hand. Ready? She asked. Ready, I said. I didn't look back. I just drove forward into my own life. My mother said I'd always be last. So I stopped standing in their line. If you've ever been the forgotten one, the black sheep, or the person who finally stopped waiting for permission to be happy, hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments. What was the moment you finally chose yourself? Because silence can be power too. But sometimes, speaking up is the only way to be free. I'm Corinne, and thanks for listening.